Quick and the Dead by Nick Moulten. I arrived at Dr. O'Carroll's asylum for the deceased in a black carriage. As the fair-haired young doctor helped me down, I screamed that I was still alive and wrenched free of him. 2 mortuary attendants held me down and injected me with a foul-smelling substance they called formaldehyde. Then my husband, dressed in impeccable mourning, produced my death certificate and committal papers. They fastened me to a trolley and wheeled me through the building. By twisting my head, I was able to see endless green walls, swinging double doors, and the beshrouded forms of the unfortunates who shared my plight. We stopped. I heard the rattle of keys and the groan of hinges. Then the trolley rolled into a dimly lit chamber, and my straps were unfastened. The mortuary attendants blocked the door. A flabby, balding tough and a vile little man with red hair. The fat oaf waved a lordly hand. "Here we are, miss. Home sweet home." The room was a windowless vault with whitewashed walls, furnished with a lead coffin. The only light filtered through a tiny grille in the top of the door. I protested the lack of light, and the redhead told me that it was against Dr. O'Carroll's rules. Sunlight and fresh air would make a woman in my condition too excitable. Nor was I allowed to read, write, or have any form of amusement. "What am I to do?" I asked. "Stare at the bare walls all day? That's what most of them do," the thin man said. The door banged shut, leaving me in twilight. I was still weak from my illness, and my movements were slow and clumsy. I shuffled around the vault like an old woman, running my hands over the lime-washed walls. Apart from the coffin, which rested on a stone shelf opposite the door, there were no furnishings whatsoever, not even the sparse comforts of prison. I had no Bible, no plate or pitcher, no chamber pot. For a night and half a day I raged and wept. It is a fearful thing to die. More fearful still is to be treated as one of the dead. At last the bolt slid aside. The light poured in and I stumbled out. The young doctor I had screamed at on my arrival took my arm and introduced himself as Dr. Morgan. "Would you accompany me on a turn around the grounds?" he said. "Is this a privilege you usually offer corpses, or am I receiving a special favour?" I inquired, and watched him blush to the roots of his blonde hair. He was a tolerably handsome man, if a little short. "I have a scientific interest in your case," he said. "However, it would be better if you were not to mention it to other patients. Dr. O'Carroll does not approve of favouritism. Am I such a remarkable cadaver to excite your curiosity so? Or is there perhaps some uncertainty about my diagnosis?" He stammered that from the moment I stepped down from the carriage I had exhibited many fascinating symptoms. Then he plunged into medical jargon so impenetrable that one would need a scalpel to cut through it. I let him rattle on, noticing the sidelong glances he gave me. Men used to look at me in that way before I was married. If I were truly dead, he surely would never have looked at me so. At last I began to see a way out of this hell. I was awakened before dawn by the rattle of keys in the door. Before I could utter a word, the orderlies had me by the elbows and I was pinioned face down on a trolley. I struggled hard as they wheeled me to a place that reeked of ether and formaldehyde. "Where am I? Please." "Keep still, miss. Dr. O'Carroll has to operate." The red-headed fool sounded almost kind. I could see gloved hands, a green-coated figure leaning over me. The surgeon's soft Irish accent carried clearly through his mask. "You're in the pathology laboratory, Mrs. Hetherington. To stabilize your condition, we must fit you with a galvanic battery. Please remain still." "I am not dead!" I remember nothing more of the procedure beyond my overpowering horror. There was a knock on the door of my vault. I rolled over and attempted to cover my eyes with my arm. "Go away!" The door opened. A hand touched my back. "Mrs. Hetherington?" I glared at Dr. Morgan and pulled my shroud around my shoulders to hide the battery. I don't want anyone to see me like this. I won't look. He turned his back on me. May I stay and talk to you? You shouldn't have allowed them to do it. If Dr. O'Carroll believes a procedure necessary, I am in no position to oppose him. He is England's finest resurrectionist. I am not dead. My husband has falsely imprisoned me here. Mrs. Hetherington, your notes are quite clear. You died of peritonitis a fortnight ago. Your husband had you conveyed to Chelsea Emergency Mortuary and begged Dr. O'Carroll to attempt resurrection. The procedure was a success. Then where is my husband now? He cannot see you. A strict condition of our being allowed to run this establishment is that those in our care have no further contact with the living. There are moral dangers. But I can still feel my heart beating. He pressed his warm fingers to my temple and held them there for nearly a minute. It felt comforting. Then he shook his head. You have no pulse, Mrs. Hetherington. Amputees feel itches in their missing limbs. I believe you are experiencing something similar. The certainty of his diagnosis sliced away my fear. Sarah Hetherington, respectable wife of Charles Hetherington, was dead. I brushed my fingers over my dead hair, my dead face, my dead body. I wanted to know this strange, new, dead me. I stood up, deliberately letting my shroud fall open at the neck. Tell me, Doctor, do I not look alive to you? He stepped back and blushed. Again. Dr. O'Carroll will be pleased to hear that you are recovering so well, he said. If I could not have life, I would seize every compensation offered to me. His name was Richard. He was unmarried and he lived in the village. He had been a houseman at St. Thomas's Hospital until he chanced to attend a lecture by the Imperial Resurrectionist Foundation. Dr. O'Carroll told us of miracles. He brought out little Molly Fisher, 6 months dead of scarlet fever. She danced on the stage and wrote her name on a slate. I was in the presence of a new god. What could I do but serve him? More than 200 have been brought back since Molly. At present we can only help a select few, but 20th century man will be born to immortality. As he spoke, I examined the back of my hand. My nails had finally stopped growing, and the embalming fluid in my veins stood out pale blue against the skin. I wondered if Dr. Morgan had noticed that I was starting to look like a corpse. Would our conversations continue once I became one of the slack-jawed creatures that shambled about the gardens during periods of exercise? I forced the thought out of my mind. And what benefit will it be for any of us, Dr. Morgan, if we are unable to love? Why should I carry on mouldering in an asylum if I am to be kept from passion or feeling by fear of moral danger? I would sooner go direct to the grave. He gasped at the coarseness of my language. Yes, the grave. I am not afraid to use the word. Indeed, I would welcome it. He stared at me, and then his eyes dropped to the floor. What benefit indeed, he said. But what kind of feeling? What kind of love? At Christmas, he gave me a tiny sprig of holly and mistletoe. Now we talked of life, his childhood in Yorkshire and his ambition to study medicine, my brief marriage to Charles and the summer we shared in Whitby before my illness. To steal secret time with me, he would snatch 5 minutes from the end of his rigor mortis clinic and delay his daily appointments with the famous Molly Fisher, who stared endlessly at the door of the next vault. At first, he recorded fictitious symptoms in my notes as an excuse for his visits. But before long, the list of complaints was as thick as a copy of the Times, and he feared that the great and terrible Dr. O'Carroll would want to examine me himself. He must not suspect these visits, Richard said. A scandal would ruin him and destroy the resurrectionist cause. When spring arrived, he left me flowers gathered from the grounds, foxgloves, lilies and dog daisies. He arranged for a lamp to be left in my vault, although I rarely remember to light it. "Am I becoming like her?" I asked him once as he was leaving my vault. "Like whom?" "Molly Fisher. She just stares and screams. I do not wish to end like that." She was the first. Deterioration was more rapid in the early cases. "So I will sit and stare at the door while you examine me and move my limbs and cut your appointments short. It will not be like that, I promise." "Don't make promises, Dr. Morgan. My husband promised me so many things." I did not expect to fall in love with him, but I found myself pressing my ear to the spy-hole for his footsteps. I counted imaginary heartbeats between visits. I could not bear to be without him. It was a spring morning when he stumbled into my vault, clutching a blood-stained handkerchief to his face. I sprang to him. "Dr. Morgan, are you hurt?" He shook his head. "A scratch. Molly Fisher scratched Cottrell and I had to help restrain her." "You poor man. Well, let me see." The Fisher child had clawed 3 deep gouges in his cheek. I wiped blood from the wound. "You must get that attended to," I said. "I needed to see you first, Sarah." He seized my hand and fell on one knee. "I have struggled against it. I have fought to hide it, but I cannot help myself. Sarah, I love and honor you above every woman. You are a wonder of resurrection, a vision in shroud and formaldehyde." "Richard, oh, please. If we are discovered, I don't care." The door swung open. Flanked by the 2 mortuary attendants, Dr. O'Carroll glared at us. "I was told that you were injured, Morgan. I see that I am in time to prevent a far greater mishap. Come with us." The red-headed mortician stepped forward and seized Richard's arm. He did not struggle. The door slammed, and again I was entombed in darkness and silence. I do not know how many days I passed staring at the wall. Without Richard, death was once again a torment. I desired annihilation. So far did I sink that I ignored the familiar footsteps in the corridor outside and the rattle of the keys in the door. "Sarah." His voice was as thin as poison gas. As my heart leapt, I assured myself that it was yet another illusion sent to torment those amputated from life. "I am back." I felt his firm grip on my hands. I raised my eyes to see Richard before me, in the shroud of an inmate. His face was pale. A scar ran across his forehead, and his left eye rolled wildly in its socket. Wires from the galvanic battery on his back were plugged into his spine, brain, and jaw. I held him, my dear doctor, as he twitched in my arms. He smiled, and his jaw dropped open, revealing tombstone rows of blackened teeth. "I have come back to you, my dear, to stay."
The Quick and the Dead by Nick Moulten was read by Christine Kavanagh. The producer was Gemma Jenkins.